Good morning, students. As I told you in the last class, that next grammar class we will be starting relative clauses. So let us start. You can take out page number 115 of your book. See, a relative clause is a subordinate clause that gives a specific information. Specific means particular information, and subordinate clause means dependent clause about the person or thing we are talking about in the main clause. तो मेन क्लॉज में जिस पर्सन या जिस थिंग के बारे में हम बात कर रहे हैं दैट इज़ द सब्जेक्ट ओके, उसके बारे में कुछ पर्टिकुलर इन्फॉर्मेशन देता है हमारा रिलेटिव क्लॉज. इट डिफाइंस और आइडेंटिफाइज द नाउन दैट कम्स बिफोर इट. जो नाउन रिलेटिव क्लॉज के जस्ट पहले आएगा उसके बारे में बताता है रिलेटिव क्लॉज. ठीक है, जैसे हम लोग रिलेटिव प्रोनाउंस एंड रिलेटिव एडवर्ब्स पढ़े थे ना, वैसे ही बस इन द फॉर्म ऑफ अ क्लॉज. इट इज़ द ईजीएस्ट टाइप ऑफ क्लॉज. ओके, the painting which was made by Da Vinci was on display at the museum. So which was made by Da Vinci किस चीज़ को डिस्क्राइब कर रहा है? It is describing the painting. It is describing the thing that is the painting. ठीक है, so the painting is being described by the relative clause which was made by Da Vinci. ठीक है, she loves the bag which her mother had gifted her. What does she love? The bag. ठीक है, बैग के बारे में डिस्क्राइब कर रहा है. बैग उसको किसने दिया था? Which her mother had gifted her. So this is the relative clause. Okay, a relative clause is introduced by a relative pronoun like who, which, what, whose, whom, and that, or a relative adverb like why, when, and where. ठीक है, रिलेटिव क्लॉजेज जो होते हैं वो एडजेक्टिव क्लॉजेज के टाइप्स होते हैं. ठीक, बिकॉज वी हैव स्टडीड इन एडजेक्टिव क्लॉज कि एडजेक्टिव क्लॉज क्या करता है? इट वर्क्स एज एन एडजेक्टिव इन द सेंटेंस, राइट. सो एडजेक्टिव का क्या काम होता है सेंटेंस में? इट डिस्क्राइब्स अबाउट द नाउन और द पर्सन और द थिंग और द एनिमल, राइट. सो सिमिलरली हियर ऑल्सो रिलेटिव क्लॉज क्या कर रहा है? हमारा नाउन या मतलब बेसिकली इट इज़ टेलिंग अस अबाउट द नाउन, राइट, और द पर्सन और थिंग. सो it is a type of adjective clause. Now uses of relative pronouns and adverbs in relative clauses. The first one is who. How do we use who in the sentence? Who किसके बारे में बताता है? When we are talking about a person, not a thing, right? So who always tells us about a person and not a thing. For example, do you know the lady who transports leftover food from wedding venues to orphanages? Which lady? Who transports leftover food, right? Who transports leftover food? Which lady are we talking about? We are talking about the lady who transports leftover food. तो who किसको describe कर रहा है? The lady, right? She's a person. Then next we have which and that. Now which and that किस चीज़ को refer करता है? Does it refer to a person? No, it refers to a thing instead of a person. Example, I am looking for the book which was kept on the coffee table. See here, which was kept on the coffee table. क्या रखा था coffee table पे? The book, right? So we are describing a thing. ठीक है, I am looking for the book which was kept on the coffee table. Which was kept on the coffee table is a relative clause, right? किसको describe कर रहा है? Book को. It is describing a thing. That is why we have used which. Instead of which we can also use that. Okay, I am looking for the book that was kept on the coffee table. ठीक, तो that, which and that are used for a thing, used to refer for a thing instead of a person. The next is what. So sometimes how do we use what? We use what instead of that. Sometimes instead of that we use what. I apologize for what I said earlier. ओके, सो आई अपोलोजाइज फॉर वॉट आई सेड earlier. ठीक, अब इसको हम इस तरह से भी लिख सकते हैं, आई अपोलोजाइज फॉर दैट विच आई हैड सेड earlier. सो इंस्टेड ऑफ दैट वॉट वी हैव यूज्ड वॉट. दैट की जगह क्या यूज़ किए हैं? वॉट यूज़ किए हैं. Second example, we must be particular about what we wear to the formal dinner. So what must we be particular about? About what we wear to the formal dinner. इसको हम ऐसे भी लिख सकते हैं that we must be particular about that which we wear to the formal dinner. ठीक है, so you have seen the use of what also. Next is whose. Okay, now how do we use whose? Whose is used to show possession, that to whom does the thing or belongs to. ओके, किसका है वो, दैट इज शोन बाय whose. इट इज यूज्ड इन प्लेस ऑफ his, her or their and it is always followed by a noun. ठीक है, the principal spoke to the lady whose son had been injured. तो whom did the principal speak to, like whom did the principal speak to? The lady. Now the lady को कौन सा क्लॉज डिस्क्राइब कर रहा है? whose son had been injured. So you can see whose के बाद क्या आया है? son. son क्या है? noun है ना. So the principal spoke to the lady whose son had been injured. So whose, lady's son, right? the son of the lady, right? So it is showing possession कि किसका बेटा? उस लेडी का बेटा. ठीक है, so whose is used to show possession. Then we have the next one, which is whom. Now whom is used to refer to a noun or a pronoun which acts as the object in the sentence. whom किसके लिए यूज होता है? whom उस noun या उस pronoun के लिए यूज होता है जो sentence में object का काम कर रहा हो. It is used in place of him, her or them. Fine. The doctor whom we want to consult is performing an emergency operation. See, which doctor are we talking about? We are talking about the doctor whom we want to consult. The next example is the stranger to whom we gave the parcel has disappeared mysteriously. So you have seen the use of whom also. Next is when, where and why. Now when do we use when do we use where, and when do we use why? We use, see, all these three are relative adverbs and the ones which we have studied earlier were relative pronouns. Okay, so when do we use when, where and why? ये जो relative adverbs हैं, these are introduced in the sentence like with like a relative clause. The clause जो होता है, relative clause जो होता है, उसको हम लोग sentence में इन adverbs के साथ introduce कर सकते हैं, चाहे relative adverbs हो चाहे relative pronouns हो. तो sentence में relative clause को लाने के लिए we use either relative pronouns or relative adverbs, and these are used to, when is used to talk about time, where is used to talk about place, and why is used to talk about reason. Okay, so example, my mother remembers the days when she and her friends would gather at a neighbor's house to watch TV. So here see, you can see that when is used to refer to the time. कब का time mother याद करती हैं? She remembers the days when she and her friends would gather at a neighbor's house to watch TV. Next one is, can you suggest a shop where I can get second-hand musical instruments? So here see, where is used to refer to the place. Which place? The shop where I can get a second-hand musical instrument. Then next is, I know the reason why there is none of the usual traffic on the streets today. So here you can clearly see in the sentence that why there is none of the usual traffic on the streets today tells about the reason, talks about the reason of the verb, right? Okay, the next that we are going to study is omission of relative pronouns. When do we omit relative pronouns? Omit means when do we not use relative pronouns in a sentence. Okay, when whom, which, that is not the subject of the clause, we may not use it. Now we know that a clause has a subject and a verb of its own. तो जब whom, which और that clause का subject नहीं होता है, then we do not use relative pronouns. Example, is this the child you were talking about? Right? इसमें हम whom नहीं यूज़ करेंगे. ठीक है, यहाँ पे relative pronoun whom नहीं यूज़ करेंगे. Why? Because is this the child you were talking about? यहाँ पे subject क्या है? It is the child, right? It is not whom. तो यहाँ पे हम whom नहीं यूज़ करेंगे. Similarly, the boy we wanted to meet has gone with his father. The boy we wanted to meet, right? Now this is the clause. Now tell me, what is the subject of this clause? The subject of this clause is the boy. इसीलिए हम यहाँ पे relative pronoun नहीं use करेंगे, right? Now look at the box which is given beside. Watch out. When who, which or that is the subject of the verb of the dependent clause. जब who, which और that dependent clause का subject होता है, ठीक है, dependent clause. You know dependent and independent clause, right? तो जब who, which और that dependent clause का subject होता है, that time it cannot be left out, that time it cannot be omitted. Example, I have lost the pen drive which had my favorite songs. Right, here you can see I have lost the pen drive had my favorite songs. ऐसे लिख सकते हैं क्या? नहीं लिख सकते ना, it will not make any sense. So that is why यहाँ पे हम लोग relative clauses relative pronouns को omit नहीं कर सकते हैं. ठीक है. Then how do we place the prepositions in relative clauses? In informal writing, the prepositions comes after the verb, whereas in formal writing the preposition is placed before the relative pronoun which or that. ठीक है. In informal writing means if we are writing informally, ऐसे एवी वाला लिख रहे हैं. ठीक है. Then we will use the preposition after the verb, whereas if we are writing it formally, we are writing it in the proper way, nicely, then we'll use the preposition before the relative pronoun which or that. For example, this is the house Tagore lived in. This is informal writing. Okay, so we have used the preposition after the verb which is lived. But in the second sentence, this is the house in which Tagore lived. So where have we used the preposition here? Before the relative pronoun which. Okay, I hope till here you have understood. The next is defining and non-defining relative clauses. Now, what is a defining relative clause? As the name suggests, a defining relative clause gives us essential information. Meaning of essential is important. Okay, जो बहुत ज़रूरी है. ठीक है. A defining relative clause gives us essential information about the noun which we are talking about. Okay, it is the clause on which the sentence depends for completing its meaning. That means without this relative clause the sentence will not have a complete meaning. ठीक है. Changing the clause changes the meaning of the sentence completely. अगर इस clause को change कर दिया जाए उसमें sentence की meaning completely change हो जाती है. The meaning of the sentence changes completely with the change in the clause. A defining relative clause usually comes immediately after the noun. For example, I know a person who can help you find that book. So who can help you find that book is the defining relative clause. Instead of that, I can also write I know a person who can suggest you a good coaching center. Now again the meaning of the sentence changes with the change in the relative clause, right? तो डिफाइनिंग रिलेटिव क्लॉज क्या होता है? जो सेंटेंस की मीनिंग को कंप्लीट करता है, और अगर इस रिलेटिव क्लॉज को चेंज कर दिया जाए तो पूरी सेंटेंस की मीनिंग चेंज हो जाती है. ठीक है. वी विश टू लिव इन अ प्लेस विच इज़ नॉट टू फार अवे फ्रॉम द सी. ओके, विच इज़ नॉट टू फार अवे फ्रॉम द सी, इट इज़ डिस्क्राइबिंग द प्लेस, राइट? अब इंस्टेड ऑफ दिस इफ वी राइट वी विश टू लिव इन अ प्लेस which, now instead of which is not too far away from the sea, if I write which is too far away from the sea. Okay, तो सेंटेंस की मीनिंग चेंज हो गई कि नहीं, राइट? सो डिफाइनिंग रिलेटिव क्लॉज क्या होता है? जो सेंटेंस की मीनिंग को बनाता है. ठीक है. इफ़ वी चेंज दैट डिफाइनिंग रिलेटिव क्लॉज, बहुत इंपॉर्टेंट इन्फॉर्मेशन देता है नाउन के बारे में डिफाइनिंग रिलेटिव क्लॉज. ठीक है. अगर हम उस क्लॉज को चेंज कर देंगे तो हमारे सेंटेंस की पूरी मीनिंग चेंज हो जाएगी. द एंटायर मीनिंग ऑफ द सेंटेंस विल चेंज इफ we change the defining relative clause. Okay, the next is non-defining relative clause. This is just the opposite of defining relative clause. ठीक है. Non-defining relative clause gives us extra information about a person or thing. It gives us extra information about the noun. It is not necessary that it will like bring out the meaning of the sentence. ठीक है. I am going to meet Sanjay who helped me with the hotel bookings. Now if I only write I am going to meet Sanjay, ठीक है. अब संजय से किसी और का क्या लेना देना, right? Nobody has anything to do with Sanjay. I can only write I am going to meet Sanjay, right? So it is only giving extra information about Sanjay who helped me with the hotel bookings. This is only giving us extra information about Sanjay. We stayed at Nature's Nest. Now Nature's Nest is a seaside resort, right? So we stayed at nature's nest. We can simply write this much, right? But instead of that, we stayed at nature's nest, which is an idyllic seaside resort. Now, which is an idyllic seaside resort is a non-defining relative clause because it is giving us extra information about the proper noun, the resort, which is nature's nest. Okay. She is placing her order with big grocers which sells organic food products. Instead of that, if we write she is placing her order with big grocers, that is enough, that much is enough. But which sells organic food products gives us extra information about the company or the shop or the online shop, big grocers. Okay, so she is placing her order with big grocers. This much was also complete, but when we write which sells organic food products, we are giving extra information about big grocers. Okay, so I hope you have understood defining and non-defining relative clauses. Okay, with that we end the explanation of this chapter. I will send you the exercises and you can do it. Next turn we'll start sentences. Okay, sentences is the next chapter. Next turn we'll start with sentences, the types of sentences, etc. Okay, thank you children, have a good time and copy down the exercises from the PDF in your